please. Roll call.
Commissioner Abraham?
Present.
Commissioner Galt?
Present.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Present.
Mayor Taylor?
Present. Tonight, we had the pleasure of Fowler Black being here to do our invocation. And our Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be Kate and Addie Rogers, and they're part of the Paducah Tillman High School speech team. So as soon as our invocation, Kate and Addie, you can come up and help us lead with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Fowler. Everyone will rise.
Heavenly Father, in your word, you have given us a vision, that holy city to which the nations of the world bring their glory. Behold and visit, as we pray, these cities of the earth. Renew the ties of mutual regard for one another, which form our civic life. Send us honest and able leaders. Enable them and enable us to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and justice with order, and that men and women from different cultures and with differing talents may find with one another the fulfillment of their humanity. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Manager, are there any additions or deletions?
Madam Mayor, there are none.
So I have a couple of proclamations tonight. To all to whom these presents shall come, whereas working women constitute 71 million of the nation's workforce and strive to serve their communities, their states, and their nation in professional, civic, and cultural capacities. Whereas women-owned businesses account for 30% of U.S. business, generating $1.5 trillion in sales and employing 9.2 million people. Whereas the major goals of business and professional women's foundations are to promote equality for all women, help to create better conditions for working women through the study of social, educational, and economic and political aspects of our economy. Whereas all of us are proud of women's leadership in these many fields. Whereas the Paducah Business and Professional Women's Organization, Inc. is the oldest in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and having been formed in 1919 by Ms. Ann I. Baker, now therefore, I, Gail Kaler, Mayor of Paducah, Kentucky, by the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim October the 19th through the 23rd, 2015 as National Business Women's Week. This event is sponsored by the Business and Professional Women's Foundation. I urge all citizens in Paducah, all civic and fraternal groups, all educational associations, all news media, and all community organizations to join this salute to working women. Encourage and promote the celebration of the achievement of all business and professional women as they contribute daily to our economic, civic, and cultural purposes. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed, October the 6th, 2015. And I think we have a couple of business women here tonight to accept this proclamation. Audrey, how are you?
Fine.
Good. Would you all like to say anything tonight?
Yes.
Please do. And you've received a really nice award lately.
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Mayor, Commissioners, we thank you for this proclamation. The mission of the Paducah Business and Professional Women is to create a successful work environment by focusing on issues that impact women, their families, employers, and businesses. The Paducah Club is the oldest in the state and one of the oldest in the nation. We're very proud to carry on this heritage. In that vein, the Paducah Club 2 years ago gave over $60,000 to the West Kentucky Community and Technical College for scholarships for women so that we can encourage women to get an education to go out in the world and do better. We also, this year, gave over $20,000 to West Kentucky Community and Technical College in order to set up funds for those working women or students who might have issues that would arise that would impede them if they had some emergency and they couldn't get to school. We do everything we can to strive to encourage women in the workplace, women in education, women and their families. We want to create healthy families, healthy workplace for women and their families. And we thank you for this proclamation
Thank you.
today.
And you do an excellent job.
Thank you.
October, the month of October, has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month, and I would like to do a proclamation for that. The month of October has been recognized as National Arts and Humanities Month by thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, states across the country, as well as by the White House and Congress for 30 years. Whereas the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind, whereas the arts and humanities enhance and enrich the lives of every American, whereas the arts and humanities play a unique role in the lives of our families, our communities, and our country, whereas the nonprofit arts industry also strengthens our economy by generating $135 billion in total economic activity annually, $2.2 billion in government revenue, and by supporting the full-time equivalent of 4.1 million jobs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Gail Kaler, Mayor of Paducah, Kentucky, do hereby proclaim October as National Arts and Humanities Month in Paducah and call on all citizens to celebrate, promote the arts and the culture in our nation, and to specifically encourage the greater participation by those said citizens in taking action for the arts and humanities in their towns and cities. I have signed this and caused the seal of the city to be affixed on October the 6th, 2015. Val, are you sure you don't want to take this? I think Mary wanted it in the office, so if you don't mind taking it. And our heartfelt sympathy go out to Mary and her family in the death of her mother. Okay, we'll go on to our meeting. Commissioner Abraham, you have the minutes.
I do. I move that the reading of the minutes for September 21st, 2015 and September 22nd, 2015 City Commission meeting be waived and that the minutes of said meetings prepared by the city clerk be approved as written.
Second.
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kaler.
Aye. And I'd just like to say a quick shout out to Lindsay Parrish. She's filling in for Tammy tonight. She does an excellent job. Thank you. So we'll go on to our appointments. Whereas subject to the approval of the Board of Commissioners, I hereby appoint Debbie Gentry as a member of the Board of Assessment Appeals to replace Mary Hoy, who has resigned. This term will expire December 31st, 2018.
I move that the Board of Commissioners approve the action of Mayor Kaler in appointing Debbie Gentry as a member of the Board of Assessment Appeals.
Second.
City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham,
Aye.
Commissioner Galt,
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Kaler.
Aye. Municipal orders. Commissioner Rhodes, please.
Move that a municipal order entitled, a municipal order authorizing the mayor to execute all documents necessary to obtain a grant in the amount of $9,192 from the Purchase Area Development District to be used for the purchase of an office equipment for the Human Resources Department and Planning Department be adopted.
Second.
Good evening, Mayor. Steve Irvin and Cheryl Chino were unavailable this evening, so I'm third deep on the planning bench. Annual Small Area Development Fund grant this year to be used for printers and other technologies in City Hall.
Okay. Any questions for Steve? Okay, City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kayler?
Aye. Commissioner Wilson, please.
I move that a municipal order entitled, a municipal order authorizing the mayor to execute a deed of conveyance and all documents necessary for acquisition of a portion of real property located at 3311 Olivet Church Road to be used as a right-of-way and permanent drainage and public utility easement for the Olivet Church Road Improvement Project for and in consideration of $4,000 be adopted.
Second.
Rick?
Mayor Commission, this is the last acquisition we need to make for that project, so I'm glad that we can get to that point.
Good. Any questions for Rick? Right. We're just excited.
And if you haven't been out to the project, it's moving nicely, and so long the weather keeps cooperating, we'll be out of the mall area by November 1st.
Okay. Thank you. City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kayler?
Aye. Commissioner Abraham, please.
I move that a municipal order entitled, a municipal order of the City of Paducah, Kentucky approving the identification and license agreement between the City of Paducah, Kentucky and Paducah Riverfront Hotel LP with respect to a public project authorizing the execution of the agreement be adopted.
Second.
Good evening again. This is another piece of the hotel puzzle. A short time ago, Lingate came to us and said we would like to advance some of the demolition work on the hotel site. Ordinarily, what the development plan that we executed contemplated was that after the bank loan occurred and after he signed the lease, we would take off the property what we wanted, and then it was up to him to do the demolition of the concrete and the associated foundation work. But given the time of the year, he has asked if he could proceed before he has signed a lease with us. So we said we think that is okay, provided in the highly unlikely event something would go wrong with the hotel and he would elect not to close, he would have to make us whole for the taking the concrete out of the ground. Mr. Higdon has already signed this agreement. The city engineer has already hired a mechanical contractor to remove our mechanical pieces. We received bids today for electrical contractors to do the same, and we expect to have all that work done no later than October 16th. We expect Mr. Higdon to go in right behind us and start doing demolition. We do know that bank closing cannot occur before November 1st because of the way the bonds were structured. So we expect bank closing in sometime after November 1st, but this gives him a little jump on that process.
Thank you. City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kayler?
Aye. We'll go on to ordinances adoption. Commissioner Galt, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance fixing the levies and rates of taxation on all property in the City of Paducah, Kentucky, subject to taxation for municipal purposes and for school purposes for the period from July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2016, with the purposes of said taxes herein under defined. Purpose and the rate is per $100. General fund of the city, real property 0.255, personal property 0.390, motor vehicles and watercraft 0.390, school purposes Paducah Junior College real estate 0.017, personal property 0.017, motor vehicles and watercraft 0.031. The City of Paducah shall collect the following taxes for the Board of Education: Paducah Independent School, real property 0.800, personal property 0.800, inventory 0.800. Total tax rate per $100, real property 1.072, total tax rate per $100 personal property 1.207, total tax rate per $100 inventory 0.800, total tax rate per $100 motor vehicle and watercraft 0.421. Property taxes levied herein shall be due and payable in the following manner. In the case of tax bills which reflect an amount due of less than $600, the payment shall be due on November 1st, 2015, and shall be payable without penalty and interest until November 30th, 2015. In the case of all other tax bills, payment shall be in accordance with the following provisions. The first half payment shall be due on November 1st, 2015, and shall be payable without penalty and interest until November 30th, 2015. The second half payment shall be due on February 1st, 2016, and shall be payable without penalty and interest until February 29th, 2016.
Second.
We've discussed all this. Any comments? City Clerk?
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Commissioner Rhodes, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing the finance director to pay for the emergency repair of the cooling tower at Parks and Services building located at 1400 H.C. Mathis Drive. The ordinance is summarized as follows. The finance director is hereby authorized to pay to Commercial, Marine, and Industrial Heating and Air Conditioning Incorporated the sum of $26,800 for services required for the emergency repair of the cooling tower at Park Services building located at 1400 H.C. Mathis Drive.
Second.
City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Commissioner Wilson, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the City of Paducah, Kentucky, approving a memorandum of agreement between the City of Paducah, Kentucky, and Paducah and Louisville Railway, Inc. for improvement to an existing at-grade railway crossing. Authorize the Finance Director to issue payment to Paducah and Louisville Railway for costs associated with railway flagging, and authorizing the transfer of funds from the Series 2013 B bonds proceeds account for the Olivet Church Roadway project. This ordinance is summarized as follows. In this ordinance, the City is approving a memorandum of agreement with Paducah and Louisville Railway for improvement to an existing at-grade railway crossing for the Olivet Church Roadway project in the amount of $196,381.81, and is authorizing the Mayor to execute said agreement. The City is also authorizing the Finance Director to issue payment at the following rates to Railway Company for flagging costs associated with the project. Per 8-hour day, flagman $90.03 per hour, truck $287.80 per day. Overtime rates, flagman $138.04 per hour, and truck $35.98 per hour. Further, the Finance Director is authorized and directed to transfer a portion of the remaining Series 2013 B bond proceeds to the Olivet Church Road project account.
Second. I was afraid you weren't going to.
I don't want to do it.
City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Before I vote yes, I'm going to just make the comment that let it be known that Amtrak, our nation's rail passenger service, their flagmen get $24 an hour. Just saying. Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Aye. Okay. Commissioner Abraham, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance accepting the bid of Stringfellow, Inc. for the sale to the city of one regenerative street sweeper for use by the Engineering Public Works Department Street Division, and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for same. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The City of Paducah accepts the bid of Stringfellow, Inc. in the amount of $182,437 for one regenerative street sweeper for use by the Engineering Public Works Department Street Division, and authorizes the mayor to execute a contract for same.
Second.
Okay, City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kayler?
Aye. Since we're talking about street sweepers, Rick, it bothers me that the part of 3rd and 4th Street that goes right through our downtown never seems to have a street sweeper, and I didn't know if that's because it's considered a state highway and we don't do it.
Yes, ma'am. It is a state highway, and they do have state maintenance on that, and
Do
occasionally
they sweep it?
they do. They have contracts for that. They just don't sweep as often as we do.
So I would need to talk with Mike McGregor maybe,
Yes, ma'am.
because it really needs it. Mentioned that to the
Yeah.
city manager as we drove through today. All right, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Galt, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners adopt an ordinance entitled, an ordinance accepting the bid of McBride Mac, Inc. for sale to the city of one automated sidearm loader for use by the Solid Waste Division, Engineering Public Works Department, and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for same. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The city of Paducah accepts the bid of McBride Mac, Inc. in the amount of $258,732 for sale to the city of one automated sidearm loader for use by the Solid Waste Division, Public Works Department, and authorizes the mayor to execute a contract for same.
Second.
Okay, City Clerk.
Commissioner Abraham?
Aye.
Commissioner Galt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rhodes?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Mayor Kayler?
Aye. So we're on to ordinances introduction, so we do not vote on these tonight. Commissioner Rhodes, please.
Okay. I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing and directing the mayor to execute all documents relating thereto with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for a 2015 Port Security Grant. This ordinance is summarized as follows. The mayor is hereby authorized and directed to execute all documents necessary with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to obtain a 2015 Port Security Grant in the amount of $37,121 for the purchase and installation of equipment to extend video surveillance coverage of the floodwall and downtown infrastructure. Local matching funds are in the amount of $12,374.
Second.
Have any questions tonight?
No.
Are you disappointed?
Not really.
Okay.
Like Steve on the back of the back.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson, please. Oh, well, I've already done that one, right?
No.
No?
To me.
Okay.
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance authorizing and approving the purchase of a certain tract of real estate generally located at 619 6th Street, Paducah, McCracken County, Kentucky, from Paducah and Louisville Railway, Inc. for a public purpose. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance authorizes the City of Paducah, Kentucky to purchase a certain tract of real estate generally located at 619 6th Street, Paducah, McCracken County, Kentucky, for a public purpose from Paducah and Louisville Railway, Inc., a Kentucky corporation, for a purchase price of $295,000.
Second.
You want to talk about it?
This piece of property is being acquired as a location for relocation of the pavilion so that it can continue to provide convention capacity to the community for what is hoped to be another 10 years. So this is the actual site acquisition, and of course it would be followed by construction of the pad that's necessary to anchor the pavilion. The timing of this is important because of the need to be moving forward with the procurement process for the construction of the pad, an effort that's underway, has been for a while. We hope will result in a contract being let within the next 4 weeks or so that can be done in a timely basis. It was mentioned earlier that efforts are also underway to relocate the electrical appurtenances associated with the functioning of the dome. That's being done in an extremely careful manner to protect those assets during the transition so that we have the highest assurance possible that they will be functional and ready to operate once the pavilion is again erected next spring.
Any comments?
I'll ask a question. As I understand, at one point, maybe it was just an offer that was not genuine, but at one point, wasn't there some offer to the City of Paducah by the railroad to lease us that property for $1 a year? And I'm just curious how we went from $1 a year to $295,000.
The circumstance that is different this time is that previously the scenario was a 5-year period of time. This time it was a minimum of 10 years. So this is a matter that I'm sure is associated with the business considerations of the owner of the property, that kicking that out that far evidently impacted the value of the property or the options that they had for it, such that they felt that they needed to get what they considered to be full value out of the property.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad for their stockholders.
I'm sorry, what?
I said I'm glad for their stockholders.
Okay, Commissioner Abraham, please.
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending Chapter 30, Civil Engineers of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Paducah, Kentucky. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance amends Chapter 30 of Civil Emergencies of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Paducah so that it brings this ordinance into compliance with the mandates imposed by KRS 65.870 and may be amended.
Second. Did you give the explanation on that?
Yeah. We'd all like to hear that.
To the best of my ability, I will. Some months ago, I was contacted by one Stephen McBride, who's vice president of the Kentucky Concealed Carry Coalition, pointing out to me that the city of Paducah was in violation of state statute in several regards with respect to the ability of people to have concealed carry in Kentucky. A couple of those items have been taken care of administratively. They had to do with signage in public buildings that he convinced me was not compliant with the law, so that has been removed. Can I just speak to both these ordinances? They're kind of the same thing. Essentially, what you have are ordinances that are on our books that I think Commissioner Abraham are fairly old. We've talked a little bit about that, how ordinances can get some age to them and maybe lose some of their relevance or perhaps even their compliance with state statute, because state laws can change and occasionally we don't pick up on that, and we may have something that's out of compliance. So it's been asserted and verified by the city attorney that that is the case, where we require businesses displaying or selling firearms, explosives, or ammunition to remove and securely lock up such items under emergency conditions. And secondly, we have an ordinance that requires that homeless shelters essentially be instructed by the city to disallow weapons. So people's feelings on this issue may vary, but at some point in time, the law of the land in the Commonwealth of Kentucky was amended, evidently, to render these provisions of two ordinances on our books to be no longer allowable for the city to prescribe. So the effect of these two ordinances is to remove those two sections and bring the city into compliance and, in the process, among other things, satisfy the Kentucky Concealed Carry Coalition in the form of one Stephen McBride.
So on the homeless shelters,
I think
now saying that they can have weapons.
Essentially, and I think the agenda
They
action
bring
form had
weapons
a
in.
sentence that was misworded. Basically, it says that the city cannot require them to disallow them. And that's
So,
not compliant.
What entities can disallow weapons within their facilities legally?
I cannot say that I'm proficient enough on that to know. I've dealt with this issue here and there in other places as well, and there's not always rhyme and reason to it. But again, there was a strong assertion made to us that we were not compliant, and I referred that to the city attorney, and in fact, it was verified that we were not. And the recommendation is to make these changes to come into compliance with state statute.
This says that a homeless shelter would have to adopt a code of conduct banning weapons, not allowing them.
Right.
They can't. They were banning them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What are you saying?
I know we had that issue with the park. Mark,
And those signs.
we had that
were
issue
taken
with the
down.
park, and we had to take the signs down.
We had signs on the door of Paducah Power. We had signs on the door of Joint Sewer Agency as well, and those have all been removed as well.
And anyone can come in here with a holstered weapon or a concealed carry permit weapon.
If they have a permit,
Right.
yeah.
And as I told a lady who was very concerned about gun violence, you have no idea how many people at the grocery have a concealed permit that are carrying. I mean, it's everywhere. It's just something we have to live with, unfortunately.
Well, and there are interest groups out there that feel very strong about these issues, and I'm not reluctant to say that legal action was mentioned as a possible way to bring this about if we didn't do it on our own. So
But now you can at the courthouse, correct?
again, I'm not familiar with the statutes to know what applies for counties.
No.
Well, we are a nation of laws, and we'll follow those regardless of our personal opinions, unlike some county officials.
Okay, we have the city manager's report
I
next.
think I need to read that ordinance.
Okay.
That's why I kept
Sorry.
looking at Captain
We
White.
have two
I
ordinances.
kept looking at him to see if he was going
I
to
got
give us
off
some
track
advice,
because
but
he's-
I think I need to introduce
Okay.
it.
Please do.
I move that the Board of Commissioners introduce an ordinance entitled, Ordinance Amending Chapter 126-72, Homeless Shelters of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Paducah, Kentucky. This ordinance is summarized as follows. This ordinance amends Chapter 126, Section 72, Homeless Shelters of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Paducah, Kentucky, so as to bring this ordinance into compliance with the mandates imposed by KRS 65.870 as may be amended.
Second.
Okay. So now we're down to the city manager's report.
Did we get both of them?
Did you get yours, Commissioner Abraham?
He just
Yeah, the civil
Yeah.
emergency.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay. As you all know, a few weeks ago we received bids for the completion of the Riverfront project. That project has a long history, and I'm not going to attempt to go through it tonight, other than of recent, that being in the last couple of years. The City Commission and administration have worked closely with PRDA to identify a project that I think meets the expectations and the goals for the original thoughts and design, or how they evolved over time, but still was within the city's financial means to do. And PRDA spent a good amount of time taking a look at potential changes in scope and made a set of recommendations, all or most of which I believe the City Commission accepted, that led up to a second bid of this project last spring. We were unsuccessful in finding the ability to let that contract, and a decision was made to rebid it. And again, that's the process that resulted in bids that came forward just a few weeks ago now. There's a lot of time that's been put into the examination of the bids. The usual verification of numbers and that sort of thing by the engineer's office took place. But in addition to that, there's been a lot of staff time spent, and the PRDA met and talked about it as well. And I think essentially felt that it was really in the City Commission's court to determine a course of action from here. So with that in mind, a lot of staff time has been spent in the last number of days trying to take a look at what options might exist, not knowing for sure what the Commission ultimately might be willing to consider in terms of resources, but at least let's identify a range of options and give you some different looks at it, if you will. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Steve Doolittle is going to make this presentation. Steve, of course, is Executive Director of PRDA. We have with us tonight in the audience Bruce Brockenborough. Rick Murphy is here, worked a lot on this. We really want to give a heads up to especially Steve and Rick for the amount of time and thought that was put into this, especially in the last few days in the midst of some other things that came up, some of which were foreseen and some of which were unforeseen. So with that in mind, Steve is going to outline for you what we think a range of options might be, and we will also talk about options that you might have with regard to resources to move forward. Step on the audience here.
Thank you, Jeff. What the basis of the presentation is a detailed examination of not only the numbers we received in the September bid, but also some of the numbers that we received in the June bid, because we think some of the decision making you might opt for could bring some of that back into play. And so when we get to those, we'll make the distinction between what we know our bid costs and what our costs that would be subject to rebid. Of course, there is the project overview as it looks right now. You can see the ghostly image of where the Executive Inn once stood. You can see over here where we have placed the mass fill in this shape in the river, and you get an idea of the 12 piles that have been driven into the riverbed that were put there to support a future gangway and then a future transient dock out in this area. What we are working toward eventually is, and this work was completed in the summer, fall of 2014. It's been almost about a year since that work has been completed. But this is the project. The parts that are in color, not the shaded out, darkened portions, but back in 2014, this is where we thought, or we knew we needed to go with both the park that would go on top of the landmass, the park that goes here, and then the 400-foot transient dock to receive transient boaters. That would be attached to those piles we put in the river, or we drove into the riverbed that formed the basis of the gangway, and then 400 feet of transient dock. So I will get to what some of the older PRDA recommendations were and how those come into play today with the current set of bids and also a current PRDA recommendation. So let's just start at the beginning of what was bid. So this becomes option one, the entire project as it was bid to the city by two contractors and received in this room on September 9th, just about a month ago. The entire project cost without any deductions is $8.45 million. We did design into the bid some certain deducts that we thought might be advantageous for us, and that was to deduct a 60-foot section of the transient dock that nipped $240,000 off the project. As the bidders said, as the low bidder said in this case, deduct some railings for $24,000 and deduct the wave attenuator. The wave attenuator is the device that goes underneath the dock to attempt to calm the big waves that come from the river to create a calmer water situation on the land side of the transient dock. This is the PRDA supported option, the project as it was conceived and as it was bid. This would get us a complete park as it was designed and a fully functioning transient dock that supported boating infrastructure. And by that we mean not only the entire 400 feet, but the fuel system, the shore power, the potable water, and the pump out. All those items were required by the boating infrastructure grant we received from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So if you just work it, the critical number is in the middle. The number you don't see is how much did we have available, so that it creates what is the funding impact on the city, and that number is $5.15 million. That is $3,920,000 we have from, and Rick, jump up if I say something technically incorrect, $3.92 million we have available from Federal Highway Administration, another $910,000 from the boating infrastructure grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the required $320,000 match and local funds that we have already budgeted and you have appropriated, and we have in the account ready to go for this project. And so the last column on the right, just to make it simpler, do everything it's would require the city to put an additional $3.3 million with the federal grant sources that we have.
Steve, that deduct section of the transient dock, what does that change it from?
From 400 feet to 340 feet.
400 to 340.
400 to 340. And it's one 60-foot section and one pile would be dropped off. And the low bidder put a value on that, Commissioner, of $240,000 and some change.
And the railings, is that all of the railings? Because I know, or just a portion of the railings?
Portion of the railings.
Okay.
The deduct, Commissioner, on the railings would be down the center of the transient dock.
So there would still be railings on the outside?
No, there's no railings on the outside of a dock.
Just on that center part.
We had railing going down the middle with some benches and some things down the middle of that dock. This would eliminate those railings.
If we exercise that
The entire
detail.
340 feet.
The entire linear distance of the dock, yes.
There are some breaks in it, but it's all practically 400 feet.
What was the purpose of that railing going down the middle?
Well, because of the width, the 20-foot width of the dock, and that far out in the Ohio River, we thought that could be, even for boaters, a vigorous experience. And so just something to grab on and hold on to as people walk on the transient dock.
It was just the one center. There's no railing on the sides at all.
Yeah, because
boats.
both Fish and Wildlife wouldn't allow us to do that, and it would be impractical to receive transient boats if we had a fence beside the dock. Oh, sorry, ma'am. I was like, I can hear your voice, yes.
The railings and the wave attenuator, by eliminating those, is that a safety issue? Either one of those, any kind of safety issue?
I'll let Rick address that. In my opinion, yes.
The railing, are you addressing the railing and the
Both. If you don't have the
attenuator?
railing and you don't have the attenuator, and because the attenuator's been eliminated, you have more wave motion, you don't have anything to hang on to, does that create a safety issue?
Actually, the railing down the middle provides people some, I guess, assurance that, there's something to hang on to because it is quite a bit out in the river. So there's that assurance to individuals that may not feel safe without the railing. The wave attenuator is actually a structure that's not seen. It's physically under the dock, and if you imagine a large wave is coming broadside to the dock, the purpose of that attenuator is to not let that large wave pass through to the other side. So it dampens that, so a large wave gets reduced to a smaller wave behind the transient dock itself.
Wasn't the wave attenuator originally to lessen the wave on boats that might park or might dock?
The wave attenuator was there to initially to create an opportunity for future, I guess, pursuit of success behind the transient dock, i.e., a potential marina someday.
But
that.
also, we would anticipate without a marina that boats would anchor in there, would we not?
Absolutely.
And
For
so
example,
that attenuator is going to make that.
Absolutely. For example, boats that will come inward and more on the inbound side, that wave attenuator will help them as well.
So, it really is a safety issue in there for a boat that's anchored out. Smaller the craft, the more safety.
Yes, it is.
Provides, yeah.
If you take the wave attenuator out, how does that affect the dock for pedestrians, walkers?
It's not really going to affect the pedestrians too much for walkers. The amplitude or the motion of the dock is going to move about the same. It's just the wave is not going to be able to pass through.
Okay, and deducting it from 400 feet to 340, does that eliminate, we can still accommodate how many boats there at the transient boat dock?
Well, you'd have 340 feet. You'd have 340 feet riverward and 340 feet inbound. Let's just say that your transient boats are 50 feet long. That'd be 14 boats, 7 aside. And then if they were to start tying abreast of one another, double wide, you can see where that could grow. It's not for only one boat to tie up to. They can tie abreast, but the boat that's tied to the dock gets the benefit of the services, getting the potable water, the electrical service, and those things that's on the dock.
Moving on. Another option for you to consider, and this would be we bid the project as a whole, as the landmass and the transient dock. Another option would be to reject those bids, rebid it again, and only rebid the elements that would go on the land mass. So this would be just complete the park. There would be no boating infrastructure with this, and the 12 piles we've already paid for and installed. We would leave them in place for a future time. So now we don't have a bid number for this, but what we have are the averages of several bids from June and September that Rick and his staff has poured over to give us some confidence that these numbers should be solid. But if we went into a rebid situation again, we couldn't promise that these would be the same numbers. So if we built it out in its entirety and put everything in as designed, it would be $4.9 million. We would no longer have $5.15 million in grant money available, because we would not be able to use the boating infrastructure grant for a land-only park. So the only thing that would be in play would be the FHWA money, or the $3.92 million. So the impact on the city to complete the park is right at $1 million. If we because we would leave or forfeit the big, we have $320,000 budgeted and appropriated. We would put that into it, and so the complete the park as designed would be $700,000 above and beyond the money, both the federal grant money and the small amount of dollars we already have set aside for the project. We would need another $700,000. There would be another possibility. We believe if we there are a number of concrete steps in the project to move up and down the different elevations of the park. If we eliminated those and we eliminated the lights, and there might be some rationale for doing that, that would remove approximately $450,000 from the project. If we did that, if you elected to do that, the funding impact on the city would be $550,000. We would use our $320,000, and so all that would be left to come up with would be $240,000. That would require, as I said, rebidding. Would probably be 3 or 4 months. Every time we rebid, it takes that long to prepare the documents, get them out, get bids back. And we would have to understand there would be no boating infrastructure with this option. Any questions?
Would there be any lights left on Schultz Park? It says deduct steps and lights, so there'd be no lighting whatsoever?
Only the existing lights that are in Schultz Park. I suppose, Mark, I'm going to say we have a dozen. 7, Mark, or Rick says 7 existing lights. So we would be adding 7 acres of mass without lights. Finishes at but it's a 7-acre sort of total park when you include the new part. So going completely the other direction, if you said, forget about the park, we just do the transient dock only. We want to just use all the money to get transient boaters here. To complete the 400-foot transient dock, we would see an expected project cost just to do the dock portions of $3.83 million. Then we would be able to throw the full $5.15 million in grant funds that we have available. That would be all of the FHW, the $3.92 million of FHWA money, and the $1.23 million that comprises the big grant and the required local match. If we did that, we would have more dollars available than there would be project. We would still have a balance of about $1.3 million. We would propose, to finish the rock elevation, and just the rock alone is $1.4 million. We would add that would make the total project then almost $6.5 million. We'd have 5.1 available, leaving $1.3 million left to fund, and that would be the impact on the city. What that would do is it would build 400 feet of dock. It would put in shore power, fueling system, utilities, sewer pump out, everything, and it would bring the existing rock land mass up to the desired elevation in the desired shape, and we would more or less mothball it to figure out how to do the other $3.5 million worth of project on top of that. And then option 4 that we came up with is somewhat in between. It would be to finish the park and to do some of the transient dock. With the acceptance of the $920,000 grant from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, to use their money comes with some strings, and the strings are those things we previously mentioned. It requires fuel, it requires shore power, it requires sewer pump out, it requires potable water. So if we said we want the dock, we want a boat to stop here, we just won't offer those services, we'll shorten the dock to the first 100 feet. So completing the park, that part would be $4.9 million. To add the platforms, the gangways, and 100 feet of dock would push that project up to $6.3 million. So you can see that adds a significant expense just to have 100 feet of dock. Because we would be forfeiting the big, we would not have that $910,000 available. The only money we would have available is the FHWA money. So the impact on the city for that would be $2.3 million, or call it $2.4 million. We would apply our $320,000. With that matching funds are ours; they're in our possession. So it would reduce the project to almost $2 million. That would be the finish the park and try to get something in the water. That would cost $2 million. Again, it would be to do that would require us to rebid the entire project. Going back to what in 2014 when you asked PRDA to recommend a strategy to you, this is it summarized, that the park should be finished. The recommendation to you was the park should be finished by a strategy of eliminations, modifications, and deferring certain parts of the project, and we'll tell you what those are. Abandoning the project would be counterproductive to Paducah's tourism strategy and desire to expand recreational opportunities for its citizens. Adding 67,500 tons of both a combination of rock and dirt would be desirable to get us to an elevation that would get us above the frequency of flood inundations that would cause maintenance costs and problems if we didn't get up high enough. And that having a fuel system. One of the PRDA board members heard from a series of both boaters and marina operators that said that if you want to attract transient boaters to your community, the thing to do is to offer fuel. PRDA did believe there should not be less railing on the transient dock, but more railing. That no funds should be spent in pursuit of a marina at this time. It was unknown that there was any market, and there was certainly no market for slips, and certainly there is no dollars available to do that. And if possible, that the project should be bid as a single project, and that is exactly what we did in both June and in September. This was an item that PRDA recommended to be removed, and we did remove that. To the best of my recollection, Rick, the house alone was $680,000. The associated float drove that to about $1 million. Can't quite see it, but on the back side of it was a fuel dock. We also eliminated, I want to say that was in the order of $700,000, and it was landward. So that little floating marina services building would be eliminated. We would still, if we accepted the bid, we would still have to do fueling systems, but we would have pumps with card readers and that kind of thing. It wouldn't be a manned convenience store type situation. And on the landmass collection of recommendations and things we have already implemented, and that was to defer the sidewalks to another grant program. We have successfully have accomplished that, and also to on that whole south side of the park. So going this way is toward downtown, toward the Carson Center. Back this way is toward the Convention Center. Since most of the landmass is wrapped with riprap to protect it from the water, this whole section here was a big section. It was called the stone block revetment. It was placed stone to allow people to scramble over the rock and be able to get down to the water's edge, fish off of it, sit on it, use it as bleachers, observe the water. We made certain reductions to the stone block revetment in its scale and scope, and instead of natural stone, we went to a cementitious man-made project or product. Jeff, that's all I have.
So there would still be some steps. There still would be a few steps, correct, going down to the water?
As far as what we bid out, currently what we have,
So
Why don't you, Tim?
How much did you all reduce that as far as length of steps down to the water?
Under the current bid, Mayor, this area right here, 0 under the current bid. However, under options 2, 3, and 4, as Steve's presented to you, those steps would be eliminated. That one set of steps is $250,000, and people can traverse from those levels overland because that's a gradual slope in there. It's like a 4-5 to 1 grass slope, and they could just go from the upper sidewalk to the lower sidewalk. Okay, the stone block revetment was reduced 20%, but that was in the first rebid.
So there is still some there.
Oh, there's quite a bit still there. Yes, ma'am.
80% of it was maintained.
So on option 1, I want to go back to make sure that it's 3.3 million needed to
Yes.
complete
Yes,
it.
yes.
Does that include the 320 local match that's already been appropriated?
Yes.
Or you can deduct that to get it to 3 million?
Since we would use voting infrastructure grants in that option, the $320,000 is figured in it.
So you still need 3.3
Still
million?
need $3.3 million.
Okay. So if you took those deducts, you would still need about 2.9 million?
Correct.
And with the deducts, you're losing 60 feet and a wave attenuator. That's $400,000 swing.
The center railing?
And the center railing? Is that what I'm understanding?
you're losing some transit boat docking capacity and some safety.
Right, right.
But you're actually losing, you're giving it 400,000, but the bid only came down about 200,000. Am I right? $3.3 to $2.8.
100,000 was construction management added back on, I think.
Yeah, the construction, we expect $100,000 in construction management that comes between the adjustments and the expected total project.
What I'm saying, we reduced to a lot of things out, but the price should not come down sort of in lockstep with that.
Yes. I think
We reduced the wave attenuator 157,000, but we didn't get $157,000 of reduction.
exactly.
You would not? Is that what you're saying? You would
We
not?
didn't.
The way the bidding community operates, you can look up in the base bid, and you can see what the base bid price is on the wave attenuator. But when you look at the deducts, you don't get full value of that back. They give a portion of that back, but not all of it back. Now, I can't answer that.
How do they justify that? Any idea? Just
I cannot answer that. It's in the bidding community, you know, they're rolling the dice on when they start looking at their deducts. They start looking strategically how to win the bid. So if let's just say the deduct section of the dock section up there, let's just say that full value up there was maybe $300,000, but maybe they're only going to give you $240,000 back on that. They're playing the odds. It's kind of like Texas Hold'em a little bit. They're playing the odds to win the bid.
let me ask you this, and this is here again, just a guess. Is we scale the project down and down and down, does that give confidence to more bidders? Does it take out uncertainty? Would you like to think that maybe the more bidders, the better? Kind of like the Greenway Trail Tunnel, we had a lot of bidders, had a great price.
Well, Commissioner, on this particular rebid, I mean, our office worked really hard. And, of course, we rejected, I don't mind saying, it's public, we rejected the first low bid of $7.86 million. Okay, and we only had 2 bidders. Upon the rebid, of course, they knew that we was rebidding it because they were in communication with us. But we took every qualified bidder in the state of Kentucky that had certification A, E3, and E2 and sent emails to 240 different agencies across the state.
You mean
240 different contracting agencies that had the qualifications to do this work, and we only had 2 bids to open.
I think the whole issue can be summarized by saying at this point in time the only numbers that we can be sure of are the bid numbers that are in front of us tonight. And I want to support what Rick said as far as the efforts that were made on the part of many individuals and groups, including PRDA, to narrow the scope down somewhat. And it just something about the nature of this project, the market basket full of items just doesn't seem to be working in the owner's favor by narrowing the scope. And I've asked those questions. I've asked the same question several times of Rick on that. And I think he's to the point of getting tired of answering them because it doesn't seem logical, but it certainly seems like there's some elements of this bid process that favor the bidders when you would think that it would favor the owners, but it's not going in that direction.
So option 1 is the only one ready to go without having to, you don't have to do anything to rebid it. But if you did option 1 and did those deducts, do you have to rebid anything?
No.
We would not,
You're still ready to go.
because we pre-planned those into the bid and they were approved by the various approval agencies.
Okay, talk to me about the dock a little bit more because I'm not a boater. I don't walk on docks. So, how much movement is there in a dock? The length of that one?
There's going to be some movement. It's just going to depend on the amplitude of the wave. How big is the wave? You know, if it's a calm river, there'll be zero movement. Depends, like if you've ever gone down to the riverfront and seen whitecaps where there's waves blowing straight up the river. Okay, there's going to be movement. There may be times that we have to close the dock if it's moving too much, if it becomes unsafe. I mean, anything that's in the water without a protected breakwater, and for something, you know, the dock is not like a barge. It's not real heavy. Okay, it's going to.
Courtesy dock?
The courtesy dock's going. It moves quite a bit. Okay, you know, but like when you.
Similar to that?
It's not going to move as much. It's not going to move as much as a courtesy dock is. but there will be movement.
And how wide is it?
20 feet.
It's 20 feet wide, so.
How wide is the courtesy dock?
8 feet.
The one we used down at the riverfront for then?
No, the one that's down at Burnett Street now.
The one that we used down at the...
The courtesy dock that was provided to us by James Marine was an old work barge that was about 30 by 80. That had,
Wide.
that had sand ballast or water ballast in it to sink it down in the water, and it was on spud poles.
Commissioner, this room is about 30 feet wide.
Thank you. I was kind of wondering.
I really think for $24,000, any margin of safety that provides, it's worth keeping in. I know what I do if I get off a boat and I've got small kids. I'm herding them to the center where that railing is.
I was going to say, it's hard for us to put a price on safety. We've had that discussion here before a lot with the Greenway Tunnel more than once. But Bruce, do you mind to speak to it? I mean, you sat through those discussions and you were there. Do you mind?
Yeah, I could try to characterize the PRDA board's general feelings. And, of course, to speak to safety, we had a very, very strong opinion that anything we could provide that made people feel safe when they're 340 feet out in the river would be a good thing. We went with some city officials down to Clarksville, and we got an idea of scale because they have large walkways there, and it's kind of hard to appreciate what it would feel like to be 300 feet out in the river with no railing. So we had a pretty strong opinion about that. But I think in general the reason why we support option one is that the park itself, the park addition, was always designed to be a breakwater to allow for transient boating. So if you don't have transient boating, why are you doing the park? The two are connected. And the transient dock supports our overall regional tourism strategy, which I think is executed quite well by our local tourism professionals, and we think it will add a lot to what we're already trying to do downtown. It will have a nice connection to the hotel, and we just feel like anything less than option one is not a real complete project. And then we have eyes towards doing something at the executive insight. So this all becomes interconnected. And, when you look at like the total strategy of what we want that area to look like at some point in the future, option one is really what's consistent with the city's values of maintaining connection to the river and the regional tourism and the fact that our city loves our parks. So it really gives us a 3 for 3 there.
Bruce, on that, I know, y'all, PRDA, which I serve on, has looked at several different options and taken things out. What about from the 400 to 340 feet? I don't know if I remember a specific discussion on that. I know we wanted to keep it as much intact as we could.
It was an easy deduct, I think, for us. It was the most obvious deduct, wasn't it, Steve? The first one we really thought about. Maybe on July 4th or a big weekend, you're going to wish you had that extra 60 feet. But I think week in, week out, it's the one that represents the fiscally responsible deduct.
I don't remember talking about the wave attenuator.
Well, the wave attenuator, as Rick said, it really, what it provides for is a calm harbor if we were to have a marina. But from PRDA's perspective, we eliminated the marina right out of the chute. Okay. So our concern to whether or not the water was calm on what I would call the harbor side, that wasn't our biggest concern. I do agree with Jeff that if a boat were to moor back there, he would like to have calm water. But this was really to protect built infrastructure that a marina would represent.
Rick, a lot of the boats that might come in there have sleeping quarters on them and would have the option of mooring inside there if there were not space to tie up alongside the dock. Is that correct?
Yes, Jeff. It's possible that you could have mooring balls. I mean, where there's a floating buoy out there, and a lot of boats have dinghies where they carry their small boat with them, and they can tie it to a mooring ball, dinghy over to a dock, and come up and visit. And then they have enough. I guess they have generators. They have all they need on that boat. It's just when they tie up and they can connect to potable water. They can get off their generator. When they're on the generator, they're burning fuel. And they love to tie up and plug in and just pay an overnight rather than burn fuel 24/7.
You all know what I'm going to say. We talk about all these boats, and I should have brought the numbers exactly from the TVA. But basically, I called TVA and said, how many pleasure boats go through Barkley and Kentucky dams in a year? And just kind of remember it back, it's about 600 to 800 boats a year. Now, what that means is they can't tell me, okay, boat A went over and back. If they did, that's 2 trips. They can't tell me, did the boats go to Paducah or did they go to Louisville? All they can say is they locked through, and most of them came through Barkley, the big majority. But if, my memory's pretty close here, I railed against it enough. But, when you've got 600 or 800 boats in a year that come through Barkley and Kentucky, how many are going to come past Paducah in a year if you've got an aggregate of 600 to 800, and then you divide it out, whether it's, 9 months of the year or every day. I mean, you're getting down to a couple of boats a day.
But Commissioner Rose,
I'm sorry. I mean, this is not. I mean, I couldn't run my coffee shop if a couple of cars a day just passed by.
Commissioner,
may or may not.
I would submit to you that before you opened your coffee shop in Lowertown, nobody came to Lowertown for coffee.
Yes,
we have to provide them with something.
There was Global Nomad was there. Like they were there, we were there together.
We have to give them a reason to come. We're not talking about people passing through Paducah. We're talking about giving day excursion type people, weekend adventurers, a reason to come to Paducah. Rick knows because Rick's a boater.
Okay.
Boaters like to go to destinations.
I'm not going to argue with Bruce on that. All I'm saying is that I think we need to have some idea of what is the existing traffic. Mm-hmm. That's all. I'm just trying to say, because for a long time, nobody seemed to know. So I called TVA.
Well, the existing traffic represents what we call loopers, right? People who will start at the Great Lakes and end up in the Gulf of Mexico or the other way around. And we're talking about building a strategy that is regional tourism. Sure, the loopers might enjoy our amenities, but what we're really aiming at is boaters who have their boats in Evansville, in Louisville, at Lake Barkley, at Kentucky Lake, that just want to have an excursion location. And I think boaters understand that, and I respect the numbers, but I think the numbers don't when the numbers don't recognize is that there is a certain element of if you build it, they'll come. We have to have a reason for them to come.
Sure.
To our riverfront and our downtown.
But when you have these smaller numbers, if you said, well, okay, let's say that every boat that came through Kentucky and Barkley, that every one of them came past Paducah. There were no over and backs. They all came past Paducah, and so you got 2 or 3 a day. Well, so if you had 1,000, I mean, what percent increase we're going to have? 500% increase? Then we have 10 to 15 a day. I mean, I don't know what percent increase, but it's an astonishingly small number. And I'm just saying, we just need to know that.
We could talk about this all night long, but, our numbers are anecdotal. We talk to boaters and we think we know what boaters want. I moved back to Paducah in 1991. In 1991, I would say we had 2 restaurants downtown, so nobody knew 8 downtown. We have places to go downtown. Some of our best restaurants are downtown, so downtown is busy most nights. I do believe there's this idea of if you provide amenities, people will show up where you never thought they'd show up before. I remember when the first entrepreneurs and innovators came downtown to open up restaurants, people thought, why in the world are they going downtown? Why wouldn't they go to the mall? And we know the answer now. You know, every one of us that I know in this room enjoys our downtown because growth begets growth. And our evidence is anecdotal, but we believe it.
Well, my 6800 is not anecdotal. I mean, I called TVA and said, what is the gross number of pleasure boats that come through Barkley and Kentucky dams?
I was just thinking, Hinkleville Road. I wonder how many people drove out Hinkleville Road before the mall was built. And how many people drive out there now?
But there are a lot more people who own cars and own boats.
There's a reason to go out there, right, Bruce?
But Commissioner Rose, I understand your point, but to Bruce's point, let's just remove the boats out of the discussion. One of the things that we do is we utilize green space well in Paducah, and we know that by the Greenway trails.
Sure.
With green space downtown and being able to commune, if you will, with the water, go out there, we'll have a place to sit, as I understand. They could fish off the dock, those kinds of things. Younger people will be down here. They'll be investing, living upper story development. That's a completely different thing that we're not even having a conversation about that will be an added amenity to downtown. That has nothing to do with the boaters. I think we're overlooking that is what I think we don't.
Right. I mean, that's what
we're not even bringing that into the conversation. We get focused so much on the boaters that
the new addition of the park, the green space,
the completion
to the river,
of
really, that's the connection to the river
the
from
completion of the downtown and the.
that would create a buzz downtown, and that's what we want.
Mm-hmm.
We want more traffic downtown. That would bring folks down there. That's not there now.
Well, I'm sorry to be the big bad wolf. I guess I'm against any progress in downtown, of which I live and work.
We've heard that before. No, tease.
I guess my other point is that remember, for every dollar we spend on Schultz Phase 1B above the earmark of the grant, I mean, we still have this other huge landmass, a.k.a. the executive insight, the debris field. And,
I've got a plan for that.
And right now we don't have any earmarks for that. So,
No, I've got a plan for that.
But to me, this is
You got
step
money?
one. To me, this is step one.
Okay.
This is step
I'm just
one.
saying you can't do one and not do the other, or
No, we
one.
have to do
we have to do it all.
Yes, I agree.
That's exactly right. You can't do one and not do the
I
other.
think
I'm
we
just trying
might
to save
could
enough
consider.
money to be able to have some start on executive insight.
I think we might could consider deducting. I probably shouldn't say it, but going from 400 to 340 feet. That is something that could be discussed. Obviously, we probably don't want to take out the railway because of safety. I don't know about the attenuator, if we need that or not.
So I think we need to talk about how we can pay for it, too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to give a shout out to John Perkins for his contribution to this question. As you can see, the option that requires the most additional city dollars.
Before we go into that, could we have just a tiny break?
You're in charge.
We're going to have a tiny break here. 5 minutes.
pretty well known publicly that the city has a pretty good list of capital improvements that are out there, and we have some work to do, I think, on bringing a balance between that list and our revenue resources. So this is something that a lot of thought has gone into, a lot of review of items that are on our trestle board, commitments that have been made and provided for budgetarily, or at least identified in our capital improvement planning process. So hearkening back to the budget process of a few months ago. When you look at options 2, 3, and possibly 4, the essential question there is, okay, if we do something less with one or the other of the two components of this, landmass, transient dock, are we going to commit to some level of completion down the road? And I sense that the Commission's collective wish would be that we would, certainly if we could. A lot has been said about the completeness of the project, about the relatedness of the various components, and how all those make a bigger whole. So with that in mind, the question becomes, okay, if we were to break this up and commit to a completion down the road, as some of these options have been characterized, when might resources become available? We're not able to answer that question because of what I described earlier, and that is our current demands, obligations, and the resources that we have available at this point in time. You're all going to have the opportunity to take a look at that issue in its entirety before too long. It would appear that the range again here is between $3.3 million on the high end and on the very, very low end, $250,000 that has nothing done on one component, that being the transient dock, and also surrenders the big grant. So what that does is keeps us from being able to put together a funding plan over a period of the next half a dozen years or so for completing some portion or portions of this that might not be part of a contract that we would let now. Does everybody understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know where we would go 2 years down the road, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So the question becomes, is there an opportunity now? Is there a resource that might be available without potentially complicating the bigger looming issue of multiple projects that are going to require capital financing and some consideration of expansion of resources? There is an opportunity available, and that comes as a result of some restructuring of the hotel project, not all of which is finalized, but of which is progressing, I think, Mayor, very well. And I speak specifically of the previous plan of the cities to invest approximately $2.5 million in the showroom lounge. We had built that into the budget and projected out debt service payment for it for the next 15 or 20 years, John, 20 probably. We are not going to do that now, and we are in discussions with county officials about the possibility, and I think it is a real possibility, to fund the relocation of the dome from the 2% transient bed tax that is committed to the Convention Center Corporation at present. So we would essentially, in that replacement of that space, which isn't replacement, it's the same space now being relocated, move away from a dependence on city funds to a use of transient room tax funds for that. So essentially that frees up money that we had set aside in the budget for the showroom lounge that could be considered to be used for this project. John, any further comments on that? Because we're both here to answer any questions you might have.
Is that complete? Is that the bottom line? What are we looking at?
It's within. I guess I don't have that figure in front of me.
We made the assumption if you took the high end to 3.3 million, that debt service would be right at $250,000. Is that the question?
Debt service on the 3.3 would be $250,000.
Right, assuming a 20-year payoff. And we built into the budget $254,000 in the future.
So you could use the debt service that had been built into the budget for the showroom for this project.
Correct.
Do all of the 3.3 million.
Correct.
Or you could use the debt service built in the budget to go to spend a portion of the money, spend all the money, we would get a portion of the way done on the executive inland mass area. Because my guess is that when Mr. Higdon builds his hotel, the people really don't want to look out over this blasted out debris field, and then they'll see Schultz Park, which would be attractively done at some level. May or may not have a dock. And so that would get us, because that project was about $10 million, wasn't it? So if you had 2.5 and 1.6, they give you about $4 million. That gets you about 40% of the way on.
Yeah, you could use that money if we're successful in our endeavor to move that in a different direction. You could use that for a lot of different things. But what is pertinent, I think, to the discussion tonight is that budgetarily, that money is there to service debt, and we are endeavoring to not have the purpose for which it was budgeted there anymore, in the sense of a obligation or something that would come back on the city budget. Other options, if you were interested in letting this contract, would be to essentially, through the process of issuing bonds for $3.3 million or some portion close to it, would be essentially to obligate what I would consider to be the bulk of the remaining year-to-year discretionary revenue that is in the investment fund, at least right now, for the next 5 to 7 years. Alternatively, or to require some reallocation of funding from the investment fund budget away from several areas that it's allocated now into debt service for this purpose.
So, what we know, John, we know in the budget that we have the money to cash flow the bond, if we were to bond the money to finish this out.
Let me clarify. In the current year, we didn't set that money aside.
Okay.
But fiscal 17, 18, 19, 20, we projected
Okay.
into the future, and we had sufficient funds, sources available to handle a debt service payment, regardless of where it went, to the tune of $254,000. And that basically broke the investment fund even. We had enough money to do everything we wanted to do, assuming we didn't add anything to that and major programs didn't fall off. So if you wanted to have even more flexibility, you just wouldn't fund something.
Okay, I just like we always do.
Right,
To create
exactly.
more elasticity, you just borrow from Peter to pay Paul.
It's as elastic as you want it to be.
Okay, all right. But I was just trying to make sure that I remembered funding it for years, but
Correct.
the next 5 years, but I just didn't remember because I didn't seem to think that we were going to start this fiscal.
We only went out to
Steam.
year 20, but it's part of the 5-year plan, trying to look at what's in our face right now. And make
Okay.
sure we've got everything covered.
Rick, how long will these bid numbers be good?
We opened on September the 9th. They're good for 60 days. November the 8th is a Sunday, and so essentially November the 6th.
And so if we do it, we have to have 2 readings?
To approve a contract.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to figure out how much time we have to make a decision is what I'm asking the question.
Not much.
I'm picking up on that.
When you finish that.
No, that's
Okay. So I'm going to go back to the deducts on if we took something out to allow a little bit more money to what you're talking about, the proper, which we've kind of called phase 1 and phase 2, but this is phase 1 of Shields Park. Then there's the next section between from there going toward the the convention center, and then the final part closest to the hotel. So I know PRDA, I guess Bruce has left, but PRDA also encouraged the City Commission to allot some money, Steve, am I right, for studying to do to get the next 2 phases ready to go.
I didn't include that bullet, but that was in the recommendation to appropriate design funds for the balance of the former Executive Inn property. Yes.
Get those projects ready to go to bid once this was finished. So do you remember, I may put you on the spot, how much would be needed for that?
For design work or for the capital?
Well, no, the capital I know is like about $10 million, but
Right.
for the design work of that?
$500,000.
Oh, so even if we took the deduct of from 340 to 400 feet, we really wouldn't have enough. Would
No,
we have
I
enough
don't
to plan
believe
the next, just one
No.
phase?
No. Because
$500,000 just
it
to
was
plan phase 1?
It was planned
Section.
for to be a 2-phase thing, but most of the most expensive elements like transportation, that stuff, it'd all be designed at once. You would face your design costs at once, but it was planned to only do half of the capital expenditure in the first phase. It split out just about 50-50
Well,
as it was planned.
actually, we do have some revenue sources for the study.
For the study?
We are working with the state on following up on a request by the mayor of the governor's office for some assistance with the Prospective River project. We are working with the state to procure reimbursement from previous transportation-related project grant matches that the city made that we're hopeful could garner us up to $550,000, or if we're successful at the amount that we think we can justify or show that we incurred the match expenses, close to the figure Steve alluded to for the cost of the design for the Prospective River Park. So, I mean, we're really working very broadly on this whole thing, and and trying to see the big picture and the kind of the sequential nature of this whole thing.
Well, which would get us closer to Commissioner Rhodes, what you're talking about, that section up there. It would at least get us started on the planning process a bit.
I'm sorry. I'm willing to do the very least. That's landmass 2B. We're at, city's at $240,000 over and above, and in fact, I hope that we can even get done for that, to save enough money to do these other things, to do this other park. It would be like if you were building a house and you decided to do the first floor finished and the second floor was unfinished, or you're going to finish the kitchen and not the living room. I mean, you can't just spend for everything.
But really, this has always been the first step.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying that's...
So you're skipping to skip two.
If I were voting right this minute, I'd spend the very minimum, the $240,000, and get all the grants and things we can get to then to transition to the, because the heat's going to be on us to do the executive inn area of the park.
I'm working on
When
something.
that hotel goes up, because you can't, you wouldn't want to have the hotel and have this horrible looking area.
I kind of look at it as building the second story before you would build the first. really.
Well, I'm not comfortable with those pilings just being there. I mean, I see that from
No.
so many different ways, from a hazard to a.
I did notice in Nashville, Tennessee, that they had this park that had all these pilings up in there. They were more at different angles, and then they all
We
painted.
could just cut them down. Just cut them down, sell them for scrap.
No, we're not.
No. Okay, so how long will it take for them, once it's let to bid and they start, what would be the time frame from beginning to end? Because we've got construction going on for a hotel over here. I know I'm asking a hard question here, I'm just asking.
Commissioner, I need to look at the time frame on the bid documents and the specification. I've got so many numbers running through my head right now on dates and stuff. I can't remember what the calendar days. I know Olivet Church Road is 400 calendar days.
Okay.
I'm thinking 240. But I cannot. I would need to see the
okay.
specs in front of me. But that would start, for example, if we awarded the project, let's just, for numbers' sake, November 1st, he's got 10 days to get his information to us, and then us tell him to go to work and give him a notice to proceed. That starts the clock. But we can't start the clock without the vote of the commission to move forward and to award the project.
I was just trying to think we can get momentum going. You got a hotel going. You finish that project and follow 16, and then Alan, you come on with that second one right after that. That's what I'm thinking in my
I
head.
agree, but I'm not willing. For me, speaking for me, I'm not willing to. I mean, I don't want to spend the 240, but I guess I'd spend the 240.
Okay.
Minimum amount of the project.
Okay.
You just don't want anything to do on the water.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Now,
I
maybe
guess if
someday,
I were-
someday when the bag of cash falls out of the air, or we have the Carroll Galt Family Foundation that donates the money for the river walk marina thing, fine, do it.
That's-
And then the husband enough of our money to then pay or to get to go on the executive inn park. And
The landmass out in the river, realistically, is strictly a breakwater for the transient dock and the marina, which was the first plan. So really, that's a breakwater. It's to prevent runaway barges from slamming into the transient dock, all of those things. So you start thinking about, well, if you're going to eliminate something, you're going to have this beautiful park up there from the executive, the new hotel, all the way down to Schultz Park. You're going to have this beautiful park. So if we just want a great transient dock to bring visitors in, let's just don't do the landmass out there. Just bring the elevation up, put a nice sidewalk, through there that people can walk down to the dock, and then have your beautiful park on the other part. That would save money too. I mean, it's just a breakwater, right? Just kind of muddy the water a little more there, but
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, that would work.
You'd need 1.3 million to fund that, from what I've written down.
To do the
Option
landfill.
number 3 is what you're talking about, the transient
Right.
Transient.
boat dock.
Well, we'd have to add some
Bring the rock to the
sidewalk.
desired. Well, okay, but that's coming from another source anyway, so that's not coming from there.
That option has been presented.
As it,
Hold on, big transit.
It's the one with the green cell. Yeah.
we're into this thing. Save about $3 million already.
but I think you would need to do
No park.
some type of sidewalk through the riprap.
You have that budgeted through another source, right?
Again, Mayor, I mean, we're dealing in aggregate numbers here, large numbers to help, I guess, you all with this decision. Sure, there's going to be some appurtenances that just make that connection from the parking lot to the gangway itself. You know, there would be some small expenditures there that would not be of any great orders of magnitude in the numbers that we're speaking of here. For example, the $1.32 million that's left over in that, you know, we would take some of those dollars and make some kind of connection of a sidewalk from an unfinished parking lot to the end of the gangway.
So if you let the contract, I mean, if we vote on it the 1st of November, are they going to start right away? Or is there any way to get a 2-week extension if we just want to talk about more, go into option number 3?
They're already calling.
Well, of course, they want the work. But
Sure. Well, I mean, another thing too, Commissioner, contractors bid on a lot of work, and when they get awarded work, they start scheduling their work and start scheduling their equipment and their men. And that's why they're calling now. They're wanting to know what's going to happen so that they can schedule based on our decision here. If our decision's a no decision, then they know they can move on to other things. Or if our decision is to rebid, they know that not to schedule the work, it's to, okay, they're rebidding. So again, they're looking at their time frame for their company and how to, I guess, distribute their assets.
I'm leaning toward option 1 because I believe that we can have a beautiful landmass that's going to protect a transient boat dock that's going to bring people to Paducah, and we will also get the money to do the rest of it.
are you leaving in all of the deducts? You're leaving everything in, or are you going to take anything out from option 1?
Well, I think we need to leave the railings.
I do too.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm not an engineer. This attenuator, I have to depend on others to tell me, you know, is that really necessary? Can we do without it? And apparently PRDA did think that we could. Is that right? Was that a PRDA decision?
Steve Doolittle? I don't remember the attenuator specifically, from PRDA meetings being discussed.
It was, and it was something that came up through consultation with our engineers as something else we could add. Another thing that Rick and I need to advise you of, the reason they're placed in this specific order, in the order of, with the exception of the wave attenuator was selected by PRDA, is we do not believe under the current rules of federal procurement that you can jump to the third one. If you have to take them in the order that they are presented, and the reason for that is because when you look at the two bids side by side, their numbers are quite a bit different with them, and so you could virtually pick your. They want to stop you from picking your contractor based on the combination of deducts that you take, and alternatives aren't always deducts. Sometimes they're adds. So they ask us to present those in the priority order that you have to take them, because it could, in our particular case, no matter if we took just the first one or the first, second one, or the first, second, and third one, it doesn't matter. MAC is still the low bidder, but we're going to have to get a ruling from our friends at the Transportation Cabinet on can we just jump over and take number 2 or take number 3 and we leave 1 and 2 in the project. I'm unsure of that.
So you're saying we can deduct the dock, the extra foot?
Yeah, we're certain of that.
Okay.
We could.
But in order to deduct the attenuator, we
you'd
probably
have to dump the railing,
too, even though it's just a minimal amount of money.
But given the order of magnitude of the project, we could go back later and add $25,000 worth of railing.
$25,000 worth of railings, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if we said we were going to deduct all 3 of those, we could still say we're going to go back and add.
Oh, after it's all closed out later and on our own nickel?
No?
Yeah, we could. On our nickel.
You could add the railings. You could not add the wave attenuator.
Right. Right, I was talking
It's
about
under the
just the
water.
railings.
Technically, because
It's
yeah, it has to be built before it goes
Right.
in the water. You'd be taking it out of the water if you said, I want to try to figure out this later. Railing would be the only one that would be really technically feasible to do that.
Do all, like the Clarksville one that we went to see, did it have an attenuator?
Clarksville was inside of a protected area already. They built that big dugout
Okay.
from the river, and I don't think we saw much of one there.
The Clarksville, I guess, facility was dug out of an existing landmass and flooded
It
in,
didn't really need it.
whereas we built out into the river.
So have we talked to anyone with a dock like this on the river? Yes or no? They have that. Never imagined I'd be talking about something I've never even heard about as much as an attenuator, but
I've actually been in conversation quite a bit with dock manufacturers, and this dock has challenged them because of being in open waters.
so they have it stated. Yes, you have to have it, or it's okay if you don't. You're
No, they're not going to say yes, you need an attenuator, yes, or no, you don't need one. It's more of a customer choice than it is anything.
So the main thing, if we didn't have it, is we'd probably have to close that transient boat dock for people walking on it if the water happened to be rough.
The attenuator doesn't help as far as
walking.
how much the dock
Floating.
moves.
People would be less
Attenuator,
inclined to anchor inside there.
yeah, it provides protection from
For them.
outboard waves coming in.
Yeah.
I guess, what does that hurt? But
There's only a $400,000 difference, right? How much?
You take them all together.
about 420, 423.
It still provides some functionality for boats to be inside that area, and again, we're long past the
The attenuator
marina
does.
thing. Yeah,
I feel like-
we're long past the marina and the slips, and of course that was associated with all that. But it still provides value to that inward area for tying out of boats in there, in lieu of having them in slips.
So there is a funding source for it if we want to use that money, leave it over. That would cover to do all of option one
Right.
with everything left in.
That's my preference.
Well, we'll bring this back next week. Right. Thank you. Any commissioners' comments tonight? Any public comments? Fowler, thank you for staying for the whole thing. Meeting's adjourned.